Welcome to the Hindu Daily. Today, we're diving into 5 quite different articles from the paper. We're looking at everything from some really critical safety issues and big infrastructure plans to the everyday struggles of farmers and people just seeking stability and citizenship.
Yeah, the goal is to kind of look past the headlines, right?
Mhm.
See the underlying challenges and maybe the structures driving these stories.
Exactly. So let's kick things off with a story from the editorial section. And honestly, this one is deeply troubling. It's about pediatric drug safety, or maybe the lack of it.
It really is. We're talking about the deaths of 25 children linked to contaminated cough syrup. It's just horrific.
And there's this detail mentioned. The pediatrician involved allegedly got a commission of just what, 2.54 per bottle?
Barely anything. It's a shocking figure because it sort of points immediately to how misaligned the incentives might be in the pharma chain. Patient safety seems almost secondary.
It does. But what makes this even more alarming, I think, is that this happened after the Union Health Ministry had actually banned these specific cough syrup formulations for kids under 4. That was back in April 2025.
Right. So the regulation, on paper at least, seemed to be there. It makes you ask, where did things go wrong? Was it enforcement? Was it the scope?
How does that oversight work? Who's supposed to be watching this?
Well, it's a bit fragmented, and that's part of the problem. You've got the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, the CDSCO. They generally handle the big manufacturers, the exports.
Okay.
But then you have the state drug control officers. They're the ones responsible for the smaller, medium-sized makers, the local distribution, the sales.
So it's split, and that creates gaps.
It can, yeah. It creates potential blind spots.
Hmm.
Monitoring the entire chain consistently gets really tricky when responsibility is divided like that.
You know, this whole situation reminds me of a term coined years ago by Dr. Harry Shirky. He called children therapeutic orphans.
That's a powerful term, isn't it?
It really is. What did he mean by that, practically speaking?
He meant that fundamentally, children aren't just small adults. Their bodies process drugs very differently, pharmacodynamics, but clinical trials are almost always done on adults.
So the data for kids just isn't there.
Pretty much. What often happens is dosages for children get extrapolated from adult data, just scaled down. And that's incredibly dangerous. It leaves kids really vulnerable to things like overdoses or unexpected side effects.
Are there better models elsewhere?
Oh.
Do other countries have specific systems for this?
Oh, definitely. If you look at the EU, they have something called the Pediatric Use Marketing Authorization. And the U.S. has the Best Pharmaceuticals for Children Act, the BCPA.
And what do those do?
They essentially provide real incentives, financial, market exclusivity, that kind of thing, for companies to actually do the research, to run the trials needed for pediatric drugs.
But India doesn't have that specific kind of legislation.
Not in the same targeted way. We rely more on general guidelines. And this is despite children making up, almost 39% of the population?
Yeah.
It's a huge gap.
And it seems to extend even to things like the essential medicine list. The WHO has one specifically for children, the EMLC.
Right. And while India does periodically revise the adult essential medicine list, the children's list, the EMLC, often seems to get overlooked by policymakers. It doesn't get the same attention.
This isn't just a domestic issue either, is it, given India's role internationally?
Absolutely not. India is often called the pharmacy to the global south. That's a huge responsibility. And the WHO has flagged contaminated cough syrups, many linked to India, in connection with child deaths in several countries over the last few years: Gambia, Uzbekistan, Indonesia, Cameroon.
So the stakes are incredibly high.
They are. If India wants to maintain that global trust, that leadership role, then ensuring absolute safety is paramount. And that means getting India-specific data for kids, not just guessing based on adult studies. You need proper health policy grounded in evidence.
Okay, a really crucial point about standards and responsibility. Let's shift gears now, moving from regulatory policy to a huge, ambitious infrastructure project. This is the Great Nicobar Port planned for Galathea Bay.
Right, another complex one. The supporters are painting this picture of India becoming a major regional maritime hub, boosting security and the economy.
But there are significant criticisms, aren't there? Concerns about communities, the ecology.
And the fundamental economic rationale. Critics argue it's based on a flawed idea, what some call infrastructure fetishism. The thinking is, if you build it, they will come. Build the port capacity, and the ships will automatically divert there.
That sounds optimistic. Does it usually work that way?
Well, history suggests not always. The article mentions the Vallarpadam port in Kerala as a cautionary tale, where capacity didn't automatically translate into traffic. Real successful hubs need more.
Like what? What makes a port a true hub?
You need a few key things: strong network connectivity with other ports, loyalty from the major shipping carriers, and, crucially, a cargo base. You need stuff to actually ship from or to the port locally.
And Galathea Bay doesn't have that.
It really doesn't. It lacks what they call a real hinterland. There's no major city nearby, no significant industry, no existing cargo base to speak of. Plus, it's incredibly isolated, 1,200 kilometers from the Indian mainland.
So everything has to be shipped in and out. Fuel, supplies, workers.
Everything, which obviously drives up operating costs significantly and makes it a very expensive place to run a major port.
And the traffic they're projecting. How realistic is that?
It seems like a huge stretch. Look at Colombo, an established hub nearby, well-connected. It handles maybe fewer than 8 million TEUs. That's the standard container unit per year.
Okay.
Nicobar's proposal aims to somehow double that figure, basically starting from zero, with no major shipping lines committed yet. It really tests credibility, both logistically and financially.
What about the strategic angle, though? The idea of a forward military presence. We do have INS Baz there already.
That's true, and a stronger military footprint could enhance deterrence in the region. But the critics ask, okay, if the goal is military, why do you need this massive, hugely expensive commercial port? Couldn't the strategic objective be met differently, perhaps more transparently?
And this idea that it will link up with other Indian ports like Vizhinjam and Vadhavan.
That also seems questionable from a commercial perspective. Those ports serve different maritime routes, different markets. It's not clear how they'd seamlessly integrate just because they're all Indian ports. The lack of a supporting logistics ecosystem around Galathea Bay is the core issue.
So the risk is it becomes a white elephant.
That's the fear. A very expensive cautionary tale about ambition perhaps getting ahead of reality.
Okay, so we've looked at potential failures in regulation and maybe in grand infrastructure planning. Let's turn now to the impact of policy on livelihoods. We're heading to the spotlight section, looking at the soybean crisis in Madhya Pradesh.
Yeah, this brings it down to the human level. The story starts with a young farmer, Arvind Singh Rathore, in Mudapura, and he's basically saying he wants out of agriculture altogether.
And you can see why when you look at the numbers. His soybean yield is down to just 2 to 2.5 quintals per acre.
Which is less than half what his father and grandfather used to get from the same land. That's a catastrophic drop in productivity.
And the economics just don't work. The government set an MSP, a minimum support price, of over 5,300 per quintal.
5,328, yeah. But in the actual markets, like the Chawani grain market in Indore, farmers are reporting selling for as low as 3,000.
Wow.
Meanwhile, their input costs, seeds, fertilizer, everything, are somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 per acre. They're losing money significantly.
No wonder they're frustrated. The article mentions disappointment with a government scheme, too, the Pavantar Bhugtan Yojana.
Right, the price difference payment scheme. Farmers are reportedly calling it a fraud, basically.
Why such strong language?
They feel it's just a copy-paste of a U.S. program, but without the needed transparency. Especially around how the prices used to calculate the payout are actually set. It feels opaque and maybe rigged against them.
And there's a layer of historical irony here, too, isn't there? Farmers shifted to soybean decades ago.
Exactly. Back in the 80s and 90s, it was part of a government push for self-reliance in edible oils. They were encouraged to switch. Now they're regretting it, especially seeing prices for other crops like millets and pulses go up, while soybean prices tank.
And on top of all this, there's the threat of imports.
That's the big fear looming over them, specifically imports of U.S. soybean. It's priced much lower internationally, around $380 per ton, compared to India's domestic price of about $620 per ton.
A huge difference.
Huge. If large-scale imports were allowed, given that price gap, it could completely wipe out the domestic market for Indian farmers.
What does the industry say? The processors.
We hear from Dean Pathak of SOPA, the Soybean Processors Association. And his key point is, look, soybean isn't primarily an oil crop for us. Only 19% goes into oil. It's fundamentally a protein crop.
Okay, so the edible oil argument is maybe secondary for them.
He argues it is. And he warns that allowing cheap imports, which he blames on vested import lobbies, would destroy the entire domestic processing industry that's about 180 plants, a massive investment of $6–7 billion.
So he's blaming imports, but what about the low yields?
He acknowledges that too. He points to the fact that productivity just hasn't improved in decades, 30, 40 years. That's a systemic failure.
And what do farmer groups say is causing those low yields?
Groups like the SKM, the Samyukta Kisan Morcha, are pointing fingers at substandard seeds being supplied. They feel forced to rely on private suppliers whose quality is unreliable. It all feeds into this cycle where market prices are currently 35–40% below the MSP. The safety net isn't working.
Is there a scientific perspective on this?
Yes, the article includes insights from Kunwar Harendra Singh at ICAR's Indian Institute of Soybean Research. He notes the massive expansion of soybean cultivation since the 70s.
Right.
But he emphasizes soybeans' high protein content, 40%, and he argues the industry needs to shift its focus. Instead of primarily producing cattle feed, which is low value, they should be developing more value-added human food products using that protein.
So unlocking its potential differently.
Exactly. The potential is there, but the current market structure and policy environment seem to be crushing the primary producers.
Okay, a really difficult situation on the ground there. Let's pivot again, this time to a story about identity, safety, and finding a home. We're looking at Afghan Sikhs seeking Indian citizenship.
This story brings in a very personal perspective. It highlights Taranjeet Singh. He came to India from Kabul when he was just 2 years old.
And after decades of living on long-term visas, LTVs, renewed annually, he finally got Indian citizenship recently.
Yes, under the Standard Citizenship Act of 1955. It's a long process, traditionally requiring 11 years of continuous stay. Though the Home Ministry has apparently been expediting cases for Afghan minorities recently, especially after the terrible attacks targeting Sikhs there.
So that's one path, but then there's the newer law, the Citizenship Amendment Act, the CAA from 2019. That offers another route, right?
Correct. The CAA became operational in March 2024, and its main change is reducing that residency requirement from 11 years down to just 5 years.
But it's specific.
It is. It applies to undocumented non-Muslim minorities, so Sikhs, Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis who came from Afghanistan, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, and crucially, who entered India before December 31st, 2014.
And Taranjeet's friend used this route.
Yes, Jagmeet Singh got his citizenship under the CAA, and the article notes he immediately applied for an Indian passport. He described it as this huge feeling of relief, of freedom, finally.
How many people are we talking about in this situation?
According to Guljeet Singh, a community representative quoted in the piece, there are about 5,000 Afghan Sikhs and Hindus currently living in India.
And the migration picked up pace at certain points?
Significantly after 1992, during the earlier conflicts, and then there was another major wave after the Taliban returned to power in August 2021. It's reached a point where apparently only about 25 Sikhs and maybe 2 Hindu families are left in Afghanistan now.
The reasons for leaving are obviously tied to safety. Taranjeet's story is particularly harrowing.
Deeply traumatic. He says he will never go back, that India is safe, and his reason. His grandparents were among the 27 people killed in that horrific attack on the Kabul Gurdwara in March 2020.
Claimed by ISIS Kherson province, right?
Yes. An event like that just solidifies the feeling that there's no future there, no safety.
Despite this history, there has been some recent diplomatic contact.
It's interesting, yes. India formally restored diplomatic links with Afghanistan in October 2021. And just last October, a delegation of Afghan Hindus and Sikhs actually met with the Taliban's foreign minister, Amir Khan Muttaqi.
What were they asking for in that meeting?
The basics, really. Assurances of safety for the remaining minorities, some form of representation in the Loya Jirga, the Grand Assembly, and crucially, help in restoring damaged or occupied Gurdwaras and temples.
Did they get any commitments?
The minister reportedly promised to allocate a budget for restoring the places of worship. How that translates into action on the ground, though, remains to be seen.
Because the reality for those who've left seems quite different from these diplomatic overtures.
Very different. Guljeet Singh points out that all 276 Sikhs who were evacuated by India on emergency visas right after the Taliban takeover in 2021, they didn't stay in India. They immediately migrated onwards to Canada to seek asylum.
So safety concerns remain paramount, overriding even promises from the current regime.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Especially for women who face severe restrictions under the Taliban. That feeling of just being able to breathe freely, as Jagmeet Singh put it, that sense of security in India is the most important thing for these new citizens.
A powerful testament to the need for refuge. Okay, for our final spotlight, let's look at a different kind of transformation, Telangana's push to spread its IT success beyond Hyderabad. They're calling it the Tier 2 IT revolution.
Yeah, this is about decentralizing that tech boom. The article introduces us to G. Deba, a 22-year-old engineering graduate. She's working in her hometown, Warangal, in the Matakonda IT Special Economic Zone.
And Warangal is Telangana's second biggest city, kind of the poster child for this initiative. What's interesting is why she chose to stay there.
Right. She earns about $15,000 a month, which is less than she might get in Hyderabad. But she stayed because her parents were worried about her safety moving into the big city. So it's about quality of life, family comfort, not just the job itself.
That's a strong pull factor, and the state is actively building the infrastructure for this.
Very actively. They now have 8 operational IT towers spread across cities like Warangal, Karimnagar, Khammam. These currently host around 85 companies and employ over 3,000 professionals. It's a clear strategy to diversify employment geographically.
And they're sweetening the deal for companies to move to these places.
Definitely. The incentive package is quite strong. Companies setting up in these government-built towers get rent-free space for the first 3 years.
Wow, 3 years free rent.
Yeah. Plus things like land at concessional rates, cheaper industrial power tariffs, tax breaks, and they even have specific tailor-made packages for startups, women entrepreneurs, and businesses led by people from SCST communities.
So they're really trying to lower the barrier to entry. But what about finding the talent in these smaller cities?
That's key. NASSCOM data suggests over 35% of new engineering grads actually come from these Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities already. The raw talent pool is there.
And they're upskilling them.
Yes, through TASK, the Telangana Academy for Skill and Knowledge. They've trained almost 1 million students in high-demand areas like AI, data analytics, cloud computing, partnering with hundreds of colleges to make sure graduates have the skills companies need right now.
Okay, so the talent is there, the incentives are there, but we mentioned the salaries are lower, maybe 13,000 to 20,000 for freshers compared to Hyderabad. Is that proving to be a problem?
Apparently not as much as you might think. The article suggests employee retention is actually higher in these Tier 2 centers.
Really? Why is that?
Better work-life balance seems to be a major factor. Shorter or non-existent commutes. Significantly lower cost of living. So while the paycheck might be smaller, the overall quality of life improvement makes it attractive, especially for people from those areas.
But it's not all perfect, presumably. Are there challenges with this model?
There are. Utilization isn't uniform across all the new IT towers. Karimnagar's tower, for instance, is reportedly nearly half empty.
Why?
Seems to be a mix of local factors, maybe some maintenance issues, higher staff attrition in some cases. It shows that just building the infrastructure isn't quite enough. Managing it effectively is also crucial.
And the state is looking ahead, planning for the next stage.
Yes, they're already focusing on AI readiness. There are plans for a dedicated AI university and something called the Young India Skills University. They're trying to stay ahead of the curve technologically.
And this fits into a bigger picture nationally.
It does. This kind of IT expansion beyond the major metros is happening across India, moving from maybe 7 main hubs to around 26 smaller cities, now having a significant IT presence. Telangana seems particularly aggressive, though, pushing even further into more distant towns like Adilabad, where a new tower is under construction. It's about driving growth right down to the grassroots. So looking back across these stories today, we've seen tragedy potentially born from regulatory blind spots with the cough syrup. We've seen ambitious plans like the Nicobar port facing hard questions about economic reality. We've felt the struggle of farmers caught between falling prices and policy failures, and the deep need for safety driving migration and citizenship quests. And then, the flip side, a deliberate attempt to spread opportunity through the Tier 2 IT push.
A real mix.
It is. And maybe the thread connecting them is how complexity, whether it's global trade impacting a local farmer, or the challenge of regulating sophisticated pharmaceuticals, or decentralizing a huge industry like IT, puts immense pressure on our institutions, both national and local. It forces us to ask if they're equipped for the challenges they face right now.
Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we're eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.